They always say you should trust your instincts, but what happens when you ignore them for too long? I was a wife, a mother, a woman trying to hold everything together while my world quietly crumbled. Late meetings, secretive phone calls, a husband who barely looked at me anymore. I told myself it was just a phase. I was wrong. It took one moment, one unexpected encounter, to shatter the illusion I had clung to for years. And once the truth surfaced, there was no going back. How do you react when the people closest to you betray you in the worst possible way? Some mornings feel heavier than others, and today was one of them. Between designing client projects and making sure Raphael's lunchbox wasn't just a mix of random snacks, I barely had a second to breathe. Fabrizio had been distant for months. Too many late meetings, too many excuses. I told myself marriage had rough patches, but deep down, something felt off. And then there was Cecilia, my dear mother-in-law, who made it her mission to remind me in subtle and not so subtle ways that I wasn't good enough for her son. I ignored it. I ignored a lot of things. Raphael, my little anchor, was the only thing keeping me grounded. Every night I tucked him in, promising myself that things would get better, that Fabrizio would come around, that maybe, just maybe, we could fix whatever was broken. I held on to those hopes like a lifeline, pretending I didn't notice the way he avoided my touch or how his phone was suddenly always face down. Was I imagining things? Overreacting? I wanted to believe I was, but the doubt had settled in, growing roots I couldn't pull out. One evening, after another silent dinner where we barely exchanged words, I watched Fabrizio step out to take yet another work call. His voice softened, words too quiet to catch, but his posture, relaxed, smiling, spoke volumes. He hadn't looked at me like that in months, maybe years. My stomach twisted, but I shook it off. I had no proof, just a nagging feeling I couldn't shake. Besides, I had work deadlines, a child to raise and a life to keep running. No time for paranoia. And then, the next day, something happened. Something that made me stop pretending. Something that forced me to open my eyes, whether I wanted to or not. It was just another afternoon, or at least, it was supposed to be. I parked outside Raphael's school, already thinking about the million things waiting for me at home. But the moment I stepped onto the sidewalk, my heart stopped. A woman I didn't recognize was gripping Raphael's arm, too tight, too aggressive. He looked terrified, his little hands clenched into fists. I rushed forward, adrenaline kicking in, and before I could think, the words were out of my mouth. "Let go of my son." The woman turned slowly, eyes filled with something between disdain and amusement, as if I were an inconvenience rather than a mother about to lose it. She released Raphael with an exaggerated sigh, adjusting the sleeve of her designer jacket, like I'd ruined her day. "Relax," she muttered, rolling her eyes. "I was just talking to him." Raphael darted behind me, burying his face against my coat, and I could feel his tiny body shaking. Talking? That wasn't talking. That was intimidation. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but something about the way she smirked made my stomach churn. She wasn't just a stranger. She knew something I didn't. Instead of making a scene, I bent down to Raphael's level, running a hand over his curls. "You okay, baby?" He nodded, but his lip trembled. That was all I needed. I scooped him up and walked away, every instinct in me screaming that I wasn't done with her. Not yet. That night, as I tucked Raphael into bed, I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my head. Who was she? Why did she look at me like that? And why did I have the sinking feeling that this wasn't the last time I'd see her? I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that woman's face, her smug expression, The way she looked at Raphael like he was some obstacle in her way. My gut was screaming at me, and this time, I listened. I grabbed my phone and started digging. A few keywords, a little scrolling, and there she was. Bianca Sales, personal trainer. The same sharp features, the same arrogant glare. But it wasn't just her profile that made my breath catch, it was a picture. Her hand wrapped around Fabrizio's, smiling, in a restaurant. The timestamp? One of his late meetings. My hands shook as I zoomed in, like I needed more proof, like I wasn't already seeing exactly what I had feared. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the stomach. He didn't just cheat, he paraded it. Suddenly, every excuse, every cold shoulder, every time he forgot to kiss me goodbye, it all made sense. My marriage wasn't falling apart. He had already left it. I just hadn't noticed. I spent the next hour scrolling through her profile, watching as my life unraveled in real time. There were no direct photos of them together, but the clues were everywhere. The same weekend business trip? She posted a picture at the same hotel. The gym Fabrizio started going to for his health? Guess who worked there? Every breadcrumb led to the same horrifying conclusion. I had been played. And the worst part? She knew about me. That smirk at the school? It wasn't random. It was personal. I clenched my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. He thought I wouldn't find out. He thought I would keep playing the role of the clueless wife while he lived his double life. But Fabrizio underestimated me. They both did. Anger kept me awake that night, but by morning, something else took its place. Determination. I needed more than screenshots and gut feelings. I needed proof. So, while Fabrizio showered, I did what any betrayed woman with a brain and a Wi-Fi connection would do. I checked his phone, and within minutes, my world shattered all over again. Bank transfers. Large sums sent to Bianca. Rent payments, shopping sprees, even spa treatments, all on our dime. And then, the messages. I expected to see flirty texts, maybe even apologies meant for her, not me. But what I found? So much worse. Bianca wasn't just the other woman. She was part of a plan. A plan Fabrizio and Cecilia had carefully crafted. Scrolled further, my heart pounding, and there it was. Messages from Cecilia to Bianca. Encouragement, advice on how to replace me. She's weak. She won't fight back. Fabrizio deserves someone better. And the one that made my blood run cold. Be patient. She'll break soon. I gripped the phone so hard my nails dug into my palm. They wanted me gone. Not just out of the marriage, but out of their way. And Raphael? Just collateral damage. In their perfect little arrangement. My head spun, but one thing became crystal clear. I was done being played. Great. Now, here's topic 5. The confrontation with Fabrizio. I waited. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted the perfect moment. And when Fabrizio walked through the door that night, all charm and fake exhaustion, I knew it was time. I slid, his phone across the table, my fingers steady, my heart anything but. Explain. He barely glanced at the screen before scoffing. Scoffing, like I was some paranoid fool, not a wife holding cold, undeniable truth. You're being dramatic, he said, shaking his head. You don't know what you're talking about. His arrogance was staggering, infuriating. And then, as if this whole thing was just a joke to him, he smirked. Smirked. Before I could react, the front door swung open, and there she was, Bianca, walking into my house like she belonged there, like I was the outsider. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, that same smug look on her face. I told you she'd find out, she said, like this was some game they had played together. And then, the worst part, she looked at Raphael's backpack on the couch and wrinkled her nose. Are we really still dealing with this? My vision went red. This? My child? My family? My entire life? And Fabrizio? That coward. Just stood there. No guilt, no regret, just annoyance, like I was inconveniencing him. That was when I knew. He wasn't just cheating, he had already replaced me. But what they didn't know, what they would never see coming, was that I wasn't going down without a fight. Crying, begging, screaming? Not my style. Fabrizio and Bianca thought they had won, that I would just crumble and disappear. But if they wanted a weak, broken woman, they picked the wrong one. Instead, I did what they never expected. I smiled. And then, I got to work. First, I needed proof. Real, undeniable, bulletproof proof. So I installed cameras, tiny, discreet, and right where I knew they'd let their guard down. Then I added a little something extra to Fabrizio's phone. An app hidden in the background, silently recording every transfer, every text, every whispered betrayal. Within days, I had everything. Money transfers proving he funded Bianca's life. Conversations where they laughed about my inevitable breakdown. Even messages from Cecilia urging Bianca to push me harder. Once she's out, everything will be ours. Ours. Like I was some placeholder, waiting to be erased. I stared at my screen, my pulse steady. They had no idea. No clue that the woman they dismissed was about to burn their perfect little fantasy to the ground. And the best part? I wasn't going to do it in secret. I was going to do it in front of an audience. When Cecilia invited me to dinner, I almost laughed. The audacity. She actually thought I'd walk into her little trap unarmed. But I accepted, because I had a trap of my own. The house was filled with their friends. People who had always looked at me like I was never quite good enough. I smiled, exchanged pleasantries, sipped my wine, and waited. Cecilia was glowing, Bianca draped, herself over Fabrizio like she had already moved in, and my soon-to-be ex-husband? Smug. He really thought I had come to surrender. Then, just as the conversation turned to me, I reached for the remote and clicked the screen behind me to life. Messages, bank statements, photos, everything I had gathered, blown up for the entire room to see, gasps, stunned silence, and then chaos. Fabrizio lunged for the remote. Bianca turned ghost white. Cecilia shrieked. "How dare you?" she spat. But the real question was, how dare they? I stood, slow and calm, while their world crumbled. "You underestimated me," I said simply, setting down my glass. "Never again." And then I walked out. The silence I left behind didn't last long. Screaming, arguing, desperate justifications. But it was too late. The damage was done, and for once, I wasn't the one hurting. They were. Fabrizio tried to spin it, stuttering excuses to stunned friends, but the evidence was undeniable. The transfers, the texts, the deceit. His entire facade shattered. Bianca? She stood frozen, humiliated, realizing that the life she had schemed for had just gone up in flames. One by one, the guests began whispering, some openly disgusted. Her reputation? Ruined. And Cecilia? Oh, Cecilia, the queen of appearances. Her so-called friends turned on her instantly. Nobody wanted to be associated with a woman who plotted against her own daughter-in-law. She wasn't feared anymore. She was pathetic. As I walked away that night, I didn't look back. They destroyed themselves. I just handed them the match. The fallout was swift and merciless. Fabrizio's business partners wanted nothing to do with him. Clients dropped him overnight, contracts vanished, and the once confident man who belittled me? Jobless, desperate, exactly where he deserved to be. Bianca tried to salvage what was left of her image, but personal trainers thrive on trust. And who trusts a woman who publicly wrecked a family? No one. Her client list shrank. Her gym distanced itself. And soon, she was just another name people whispered about in embarrassed regret. And Cecilia? Social exile. The woman who once dictated who was worthy of respect wasn't even invited to coffee anymore. She called Fabrizio for support, but he was too busy drowning in his own mess. They turned on each other. Meanwhile, I was just getting started. The divorce was fast and clean. No drawn-out battles, no desperate pleas, just signatures on paper and the end of a chapter that should have closed long ago. Fabrizio lost more than a wife. He lost access to my life, my finances, and most importantly, Raphael. I made sure of that. With him out of the picture, everything felt lighter. I threw myself back into my career, launching a new design project I had put on hold for too long. Clients rolled in, my name finally tied to something other than betrayal and survival. And Raphael, happier. No more tension, no more confusion. Just a little boy who finally felt safe again. For the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and recognized myself. Stronger, smarter, untouchable. And the best part? This was only the beginning.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.